All right, I want to say what a privilege it is to have a special guest with the Jazz Jam podcast today on this episode. This is Yaron Herman, a pianist, composer, and author based in Paris, France. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and I know you tour and perform all over the world. You've released at least about 10 albums or so. You're a heavy creative on the European scene and the world at large. Yaron, thank you so much for being here on the Jazz Jam podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, I want to discuss a little bit about your background because I know you have a very inspirational story. You sort of started piano at a later age than many other jazz pianists at age 16. A lot of pros start when they're 3, 4, 5, or 6 years old. And so you have a very unique story. I want you to explain how that came to be. You kind of found piano or jazz piano as a new outlet for you after some devastating news with your sort of rising basketball career. Could you just give us a few words on that experience and how you came to find the piano at that age?
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't come from a musical family to start with, so my exposure to music was basically whatever I could hear on the radio and TV, popular music, MTV, um, your regular adolescent stuff in the 90s. Um, and yeah, my main focus at the time was the dream was to become a professional basketball player, which seemed like I'm such a huge fan of the NBA. I grew up watching basketball, and my family, they were into sports, so that was the trajectory I was hoping to aim for. And I got injured when I was around 15 and a half, like 16, and that basically was the end of it. I couldn't. It was kind of a pivotal moment. Either I really go into it, and the injury just basically made me change directions. And I wanted to maybe do something else. And the piano seemed like a nice. There was this girl in my junior high that played the piano, and I was like, oh, shit, that looks like a fun thing to do. So the initial motivations weren't like very professional, except that I met an incredible teacher, who became like my basically my only teacher, my only serious teacher. And he had developed a methodology which is quite unique, mixing psychology and mathematics, and kind of like very holistic approach to music, which for me at the time was like a real discovery. I was like, wow, what's going on here? Is this how piano is supposed to be taught? Because this is like really fun. So I didn't go through the conservatory, like the classical, the whole thing. So yeah, basically that's where I discovered that music was, a space that I felt comfortable in, and that I had, the space to express all my feelings, emotions, the inner world, whatever. And yeah, basically took it from there.
Gotcha. I've come across some things about your musical journey specifically. I think I read that you moved to Boston, Massachusetts for a short time. You attended Berklee College of Music, but you sort of found it disappointing or unsatisfactory. Moved back to Tel Aviv and really began your journey there. Can you explain just, up to you what you want to say? We're not trying to rag on any programs or anything.
Yeah,
It's just interesting. What specifically one or two things did you find sort of unsatisfactory with the education at Berkeley and your experience there, and sort of what made you move back to Tel Aviv and go that route?
yeah, so let me clarify. There's a part of that story that needs to be clarified. So the Berkeley episode, I was supposed to go to Berkeley, so I went there for the summer program just before the year started. And even before the year started, like I had a lot of friends who were attending Berkeley, and I just spent like a couple of months there before the year started, just hanging around, going to school, concerts, and hanging out with students, and just the vibe. And I think coming from such a different pedagogical experience with my teacher, I felt weird. I think it was more me than the actual school, to be honest. I think I wasn't the energy that I had at that time was like, I want to play. I want to like get my butt kicked. And so I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not sure I want to like sit and like, I'm sure it's a great thing and it's a beautiful school. So, but for me at that time, the energy was maybe I was clearly young and foolish. So, but at that time, I was like, yeah, I want to do something different, foolish and yeah, probably a bit impulsive. But that impulsiveness kind of put me on the path I am today. So I went to New York. I spent a few months over there, and then I basically ran out of visa and had to go to Tel Aviv to renew my visa. And I took a flight to Paris. And upon arrival in Paris, my connecting flight got canceled. So I had to spend the night in Paris.
Mm.
I didn't know anyone. I didn't speak a word of French. I didn't even know that people play jazz in France back in the day. And I was like, okay, maybe I have the night off. I'll go to a jazz club. So I went to a jazz club, met some folks, played a few tunes. They really dug it. I was like, okay, cool. People play jazz here. And they said, do you want to stay for another week? We have a show, and you can stay. We need a pianist. I was like, okay, well, that could bode well for my visa application. I can say I'm an international pianist. So I stayed for a week, met other people, and things just kind of like evolved to the point that I basically ended up staying in France.
Mm.
So I actually never went back to Tel Aviv. I got stuck in Paris.
That tends to happen. They
Yeah,
say
I heard
a lot
about
of
that.
a lot of beauty in Paris.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that clarification, and I apologize for getting some of that wrong. So thank you for that. Um, on a more sort of personal, musical, philosophical note, there's some key points you've made throughout your sort of presentations and your work surrounding the fact that this is another important thing about you specifically, that many people, or really all people, are born more or less with sort of a creative bone in their body, and that um, we all have abilities to create like a muscle, kind of,
Mhm.
and many people misperceive great jazz pianists or great musicians in general, and they always say, well, it's because of their talent. They're so talented. These are the things they're able to do, and I'm not. But you make a real intentional point to say that talent is at least very not that important, quite less important than most people will believe. And it's honing in on your creative, innate abilities that we all sort of naturally have, and gearing that and tweaking that for specifically what you do. Could you sort of share more about that process and your experience and how you came to that conclusion and what that means to you and your music?
Yeah, I can only speak from my personal experience. So like when I started to play the piano at 16, no one said I had any particular talent for music. I had, kids in my high school. I attended this music department in high school, and there are kids in my class that already played, Rachmaninoff concertos when they were like 8. uh Kids who were like basically ripping it, like they were destroying the piano, playing amazing, like a vast knowledge of technical things and the literature, whatever. And I was not one of them. But the specific and most interesting thing about my teacher, that he didn't teach me only how to play a style or a genre or even approach jazz. He basically said his goal was to teach me how to learn.
Mm.
So if you're focused on the process, if your main focus is like, how do I learn better? How do I become a better student? How do I assimilate material faster? How do I go deeper into the knowledge that is given to me? You can basically accelerate the process. And I think perseverance is the glue. It what makes talent manifest. I know a lot of talented people who never did anything. Talent is one element. And when I look at like people around me that are like very well known and or accomplished great things in music and same in sports, they also, I don't know if it's by chance, but they also tend to be those who work the hardest. They always leave a concert unhappy and be like, okay, I have to go back to the shed. I have to, yes, this didn't work, and I got to work on this. and they're constantly scouting their own weaknesses in order to become better, you know? So that mindset is more important than, a mysterious substance that needs, by the way, to be defined, that is called talent.
Yeah, well said. There's a book called Talent is Never Enough. And we had to read that in while I was getting my master's degree at university, for a jazz studies
Mhm.
program. And I was very grateful that he made us read that because it gets at that exact message. There's just these anomalies amongst a group of people in any given profession that, it's like these are the group of people that put in the time and the work and the effort. And Michael Jordan is throwing, two-shot free throws all the time so he can be almost perfect at it. And that's how you build that skill. And it's that perseverance, like you said, that really solidifies and molds the talent, I guess, rather
Yep.
than the other way around. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Um, First off, let's get into the album. Radio Paradise is your latest release. I know as musicians and as artists, as soon as something is released, we're moving on to the next thing already in our head and in our playing and in our practice. And what we're writing is maybe very different than what we just came out with. So, we're 2 months after the release of the album. But if you don't mind, we'll kind of go through some questions about it. Um,
Sure.
and this first question is a mix between kind of what you're known for doing in your work and the music on the album itself. You've spoken about the importance of melody in your musical focus and in music in general. And we know that melody is one of the main ingredients of music, one of the four main elements, right? We tend to think melody, harmony, rhythm, meter, dynamics, and all those things. Um, what is your process for writing melody? It often seems that people don't wish to interpret melody as much as they should. Like in jazz history, saxophonist Ben Webster was known for learning the lyrics of the ballads he was playing. And if he didn't know the lyrics or he had forgotten the lyrics, he would not play. He would just sort of stop. And so
Mm,
that's like a sort of a glimpse into the relationship between what the music means to the artist and what the artist can give to the music. Because if you know the lyrics, you know more what the song means, and then you can portray that more in your playing. And there's some other types of performers who don't look at it that way. They think, me personally, I'm a saxophonist. So some saxophonists just think I'm an instrumentalist, and this is how an instrumentalist is going to play the song or the tune. And these are the
mm.
things the saxophone can do on a song. So there's different interpretations, but you're known for really focusing in on melody. Could you talk about your relationship with melody and how that focus contributes to the music on Radio Paradise?
Well, it all starts with something I hum, Usually it's not even at the piano, just some kind of fragment that has a strong pull.
Mm.
It could be like three notes or just something I feel I can sing and believe it. Some believable element that is really, essential. And then I basically try and, zoom out from like a very specific DNA, and then try and like expand it and just see what part of what puzzle, what's the image of the puzzle. I have like a little something, and then I try and figure out what's around it or what's in it or how to take that thing and make it into a story. But it always has to do with shapes. For me, a melody has to have shapes. I don't like two regular forms that it's like, it's in terms of bar structure, or it has to be like in my what I aim for is something that sounds very natural. But when you look at the chart, you go like, wow, it sounds simple, but it's not simple.
Yeah,
I
and
can sing it, but it's wow, there's a bar of 11 in the middle, it's like, you know. So I basically try and write that flow. The melody has to flow in a way. So I try to really find and strike that balance.
yeah, some of what you do reminds me of like irregularity, but it sounds regular. And number two would be um, Oh, I just had it. Basically, like you explore or you value es- eccentricity, something eccentric, right? Um, so that comes across to me. Is that your intention? Is that sort of what you explore?
Well, to be eccentric, you need to know where the center is. So it's eccentric, you know?
Right.
So if you want to break the rules, you need to know the rules. Otherwise, it's just chaos. So I always know like where the form is, where the basic idea is. And I like to, yeah, to maybe shift it around. So it's you always have to like pay attention in a way. It's like it's never given to you that easily.
Right. Nothing great usually is. Um, that's how it works.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
Getting into the album itself, Radio Paradise. First off, I really dig the album cover. Um,
Oh,
in the States, we're kind of going through this. Well, this is my own observation, and I might get in trouble here, but there's some, phenomenal jazz players and just musical talent that are coming out with great music, but their album covers aren't don't seem intentional, or they don't seem to sort of pop out as a lot of the classic jazz recordings do, or some other European artists currently do. For instance, Branford Marsalis from the great Marsalis family, his latest release on Blue Note, the music's great, but the cover of the album itself looks like an advertisement for Men's Warehouse. And I'm just a little um, personally disappointed, we'll say, with some album covers. But yours is very artistic, very uniform in its color palette, its line work, its design. Who was the artist on the album cover? Did you have any hand in the creation of it?
I did choose an artist that I knew would get it, get the vibe I was looking for. And this one is she's from Luxembourg, actually. I think she's half Luxembourgian. You say Luxembourgian, half from Luxembourg, half from Belgium, and she lives in London, actually. And her approach, the shapes, her compositions. There's this simplicity, but it's always moving. It seems to, it's kind of active, and it's very appealing to the eye. Um, for me, yeah, it's very jazzy, in a way that
Yeah,
it's like the way it moves. It's got a nice groove to it.
exactly. Yeah, it reminds me of the foundations or the principles of what we call jazz. Um, and I think that was spot on. So, with that, tell us what inspired you to put this album together? What sparked this specific lineup? For those who don't know, there's two saxophonists featured, not just one. And I know the bass player and the drummer you've known for quite a long time, it seems.
Yeah.
What were all the reasons that you came up with this lineup for this record?
Well, it all stems from the musical ideas. Like the material that I started coming up with was like very melodic, song-like, and I felt that saxophone, like especially tenor saxophone, would be the perfect instrument because I really enjoy. You might have noticed doubling the melodies. I think almost all the melodies are double piano and saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's my way of compensating the fact that the piano is like, it doesn't have that singing. You can make a piano sing, of course, but it doesn't have that, air, that breath, that the length of the note and the vibrato or whatever, that a saxophone can have. So I really like the mix between piano and saxophone to create kind of a third instrument that is the sum of both. So yeah, that was for the saxophone. I needed the melodies to have that extra air. And the rhythm section, yeah, I've known Ziv and Haggai for a very long time, and I knew they would get like the idea behind the music, which is you know the melodies. There are some very specific things to hit, but then let's see what happens. Like I don't give instructions on the solos too much. And basically, when we play live, we just play it differently every time. So we're trying to keep it as open as possible. and just follow our intuition. There's
Yeah.
a lot of trust involved. Yeah,
Yeah, it seems that way too. That comes across in the music. Something else caught my ear. There are moments I want to ask specifically about the tune Better Place Blues.
yeah.
Great song, great melody there. And this is just me, I may be way off base, but parts of the melody to Better Place Blues reminds me of Wayne Shorter's tune Footprints, either with rhythm or certain intervallic movements. Was that tune an inspiration to you at all? Is Wayne Shorter any meaning to you at all? What was the inspiration for that particular tune?
Interesting. I never made the link to Footprints, but let me think. Yeah, well, kind of the minor blues thing, but
Yeah,
yeah. Uh, Obviously, Wayne Shorter is one of my favorite composers, so I might have, you know, unconsciously uh, been influenced. But yeah,
I think I'm getting it. Yeah, there's like these you repeat three note da 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 and then it moves differently than Footprints does, but that's part of your melody there, it seems like.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, now that you say it, I'm gonna hear it.
Right.
Every time I play, I'll be like, ah, yeah,
No, but we all do that, right? Something comes out, we don't even we may not even be aware of where it's from. And this is just something I particularly heard. And I know you've talked about you sort of are of the mindset that the music should be experienced individually and that you don't necessarily have a particular certain um message with a song. You may have it yourself, but you don't necessarily want everybody listening to get that message the exact same way you did in creating the song. Could you speak a
yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, that's, I think in music in general, it would be really sad if, music would have one meaning and either you get it or not, and if you don't get it, you're wrong. You know what I mean? So that's basically the end of freedom and the end of free thought. So I think it's such a subjective thing, and I just try and put as much sincerity and honesty and emotion into every note that I play, and then I cannot control the way it's perceived. Hopefully, it's it resonates with some people, but there's definitely no specific message. Um, there is a specific desire, though. The desire is to take people out of their regular state into something that is, they're listening to the music and they forget a bit about their troubles and the world outside, and they're able to connect to something else. That is definitely, I think, the role that art should play in society. Kind of create a separate reality from whatever, and we kind of see it every day today. We do need that space where we're not subjected to so much, yeah,
Well,
tragic events, stupidity, and whatnot.
right. There's a lot going on in the world now.
Lots going
Um,
on.
and I find what you just said very refreshing because sometimes I get a sense that, especially music that is politically involved, there might be a certain political message, there might be a certain spiritual message. And sometimes it seems like there's a pressure on artists or musicians to pump out material that has to reflect certain messaging or value things. And that you're right, it limits the perception of the art and of the art form. And sometimes we need those messages. And so a specific message given through a song can be helpful and intentional and good. But I like what your approach is, and that music is more personal than that. And sometimes if it's a little bit more open ended, that's a good thing, and you can widen um, like your musical audience and reflect, I think, the reason why we need art more with that viewpoint and that perspective. So
Yeah, we have enough people telling us what to think, all day.
yeah,
Uh, I think it's good to have just a space for feeling and basically just receiving things without necessarily judging them.
great way to put it. Um, good. So with that, I had a question about the third track on the album, "For Him for a Good Day."
Yeah,
Um, with that with that tune, did you have that specific horn player in mind? I believe that's Maria Grand.
yeah.
Did you already know you wanted her, or did you just know you wanted saxophone to play the melody?
In the beginning, before I reached out to Maria, yeah, the idea was saxophone, but like when we started to play this repertoire with Maria, it just sounded like she was meant to play it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, she has such a beautiful spirit when she plays, and I think the melody is kind of simple, even though maybe like the form is kind of maybe has a few tricks in there, but like it's basically a very rather simple song, and that's the way she makes the melody breathe, and it's so groovy at the same time. Yeah, she really made that song her own.
Yeah, I love her soloing during the last third of the track.
Oh yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, and I was like blown away. Like there's so much. You listen to there, it's soulful. You have this soulful, like very kind of bluesy stuff, and then like crazy lines, like more intricate. And I was like, wow, she's just bringing everything like that needs to be there in the music. It's
That's
beautiful.
right. Yeah, you're right. There's a little of everything, in just the right, just the right
Exactly.
way.
Like she's like a perfect chef. She knows where to put like the pepper, and
Mm.
then sometimes just do nothing, let it cook for a while. Yeah,
Yeah, she understands the mechanics and how things come together really, really well.
yeah,
So I really enjoy that track. I believe the meaning of the sixth tune on the record, Radio Paradise, is the Japanese word "jiyu," which means freedom or freedom of expression, pretty much. And so we talked a little bit about why that's important, but could you speak more on how does GU reflect freedom and freedom of expression, and why was that the outlet where that value and what you do comes out?
yeah. I think to be honest, I usually have a hard time finding names, and I just basically have the record mastered already. They go like, Yaron, we need the names. I was like, wait. uh, I find it the exercise of like finding names to tunes already very difficult, like to reduce them to something. Or so I put GU because I thought I love this word. I think it like the way it bounces off. It's wonderful. And initially I wanted something that had to do with freedom. Um, but to be honest, I think that concept could apply to the entire album. So for me, it's the spirit. It's the spirit of the album. It's like there's the material, and then there's what we do with it. And I'd like the musicians who play to be as free as possible. Um, respecting what is written, but then like if you hear something else, feel free to play it. And that's same thing like with Maria's solos. Like it's a question of taste and it's a question of trust. So when you have master musicians, you don't have to explain too much. They know one is too much, one is not enough, one is so they feel it in the music. And then what does the music need? You know,
Mm, very
does it
important.
need me right now to play a lot, or it needs me to maybe step back and listen? Maybe it doesn't need anything. Um, so that's the entire experience of the record for me, as well as the person who created it. Should I say something? Should I just stay out and let it like see what's going on? So that's also a very interesting experience as a musician, to have that basically courage to not do anything and trust that the music will be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very hard, especially as a sax player, because fingers are always moving, and
in the mind.
right, and the mind's always buzzing along with that, and so it's very easy to get into that mindset of lines, 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 play, play, play.
Yeah,
But
what should I be doing right now? I must be doing something. I studied all this shit to, to be able to do something right now, or not, you know. And then you play one note, and okay, that was enough. Uh,
yeah,
and yeah, I admire people who master that. The inner game of music. Where you're on the bandstand and you're not sure, stuff is happening, and you're like, I probably should be doing something right now. And sometimes to have the courage of being like, okay, let's see, maybe not now, maybe it's okay, maybe it's fine, maybe let's keep this going and see when it's absolutely necessary.
right,
Uh,
right. There's a little story, John Coltrane and Miles Davis, and Train, when he was playing with Miles, as one great saxophonist would do, is, very busy. He has so many ideas. He's worked on his horn so much. He oftentimes, even on set breaks, John Coltrane would still practice. And there's stories of him practicing in the bathroom and people walking in. And there's Train working on who knows what. And so there's a story where basically Train asked Miles, how do I get to play less? How do I sort of get out of the way? And Miles said, all you got to do is take the horn out of your damn mouth.
yeah,
So happens to the best of us.
absolutely, absolutely.
Just a couple more questions for you. I appreciate your time and your attention for joining us on the Jazz Jam podcast today. In general, this is sort of a silly question, maybe. If there was one track you would want everyone to experience or everyone to listen to, the one that illustrates the whole record for you as best as possible, or one that is more meaningful to you, or I'm sure you have problems with the way I phrased that question, but how is that reflected? With this music, what would be that go-to track or tune you'd want people to listen for,
That
if
is a
there
very
was one?
that's a very tough question. Uh, oh my God. I would have a hard time answering that question
And
because
I
I
knew,
really conceive the album as kind of like this architecture that has like a bit of everything in it. And so the tracks are quite, you know, different. If you take a tune like Strive, the first song, um, and then you take a song like, yeah, the next one, Hymn for a Good Day. I would say maybe the two of them, like back to back, kind of illustrate the dual relationship between like things that are very more complex and have this kind of more rhythmical, intricate compositions, and basically the shadow, something that has kind of more peaceful, melodic, uh, yeah, slower.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very well curated, more or less. The journey one can take if you listen to all the tracks from beginning to end. Um, it's the right number of songs in my opinion. It's in that ballpark where we have a full conceptual album that seems to be uh, not necessarily the cool thing to do anymore for some reason. Just a personal note I've seen across the scene. What you have is just a fully complete work that has great album cover, great songs, great musicians, great solos, awesome melodies. Um, it takes you on a journey. The first track is quite different than the last track. Those things are not in every album. Was that is that how you operate? Is that very intentional? I think this is your 10th release. Do you conceive of an album you're going to create in that way? Do you always already have a sort of preconceived number of tunes you're going to do? I'm sure some of these melodies you've worked on longer than others, right? So give us some insight into how you really focus in and say, okay, this next album I'm going to do this number of tracks. Is that already in your head or you just go with the flow?
Yeah, it depends on the record. On this one, I have to say that I brought way too much material. So I think we recorded around 17 or 18 songs, which is a lot. And I think, yeah, obviously not all of them made it to the album. Um, so I had to make the cut basically after, like when we're mixing and mastering. I was like, okay, maybe this is better. Yeah, yeah, maybe we have that vibe already. Maybe this sounds better. Try and basically make difficult choices. Um, but yeah, I did definitely try and create like this kind of voyage where you go through an arc. There's some kind of narration, and you go through different vibes and feelings, and you kind of go through like different landscapes of sound. So yeah, that's definitely intentional. Um, and yeah, I think all my favorite albums have that. Like I just like I cannot think of one that doesn't have some sort of like overall arc that you consider it as an object, not as a compilation.
Mm.
And it's something that you experience as a whole. It's not something you can be like, yeah, Love Supreme is cool, but third track, eh.
Take it or leave it. Yeah.
Eh, um, yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly what I some of the things I gathered from listening to that album that you would say, and I appreciate you saying that because again, that not everybody views it that way, and that's good to have variety of perspective. But
Of course. It's just my personal opinion and preference. Maybe in 5 years, I'll be like, yeah, no, let's make an album. Every track is different. There's like more chaos. That's fine. Yeah. But for now, this is definitely the way I felt this music had to go.
well, and I pretty much almost completely concur. I as that's what the great albums of this music have done historically, and so it's great to keep that going. Um, Real quick, just two more questions basically. One is where can people find Radio Paradise? Could you direct us to your website, your wherever people can purchase the album? I'd rather them purchase the music than not, but feel free give the people avenues where they can find this.
Yeah. So basically, your usual suspects on the platforms. Um, and I don't know if it's physically distributed in the US, but you can probably find it in some selected stores. Um, my website, I'm not sure you can buy it on my website. There are charts though. If you're interested in geeking out on the compositions, you can reach out and yeah, we can discuss the chart situation.
I think that's a great idea for anybody, any composers or players listening. I think that's something people should do.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm always happy to engage about the music. People reach out on Instagram if it's for lessons or for just ask me questions, and I think that's we are lucky if we can use Instagram that way. Reach out to other musicians, being like, "Man, that album was killing. I don't know you, but like, thanks, sounded great." And I think we as musicians don't do that as often as we would like to, I think.
That's
And
true. I certainly don't.
you know what I mean? But we all enjoy when we get a message from like someone you don't know on Instagram that goes like, "Hey man, I'm this dude from Paraguay and I just checked out your record and it's great, thank you." I was like, "Wow, that's cool." So I think in terms of community, the jazz community, we should be maybe less shy about it because we all, I think, especially right now, we all need encouragement and support and to like be a stronger community for each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. And then what is the next couple of things you're working on? You're probably already working on them. What are you doing now? What's your musical journey right now? Are you touring? Give us some insight into what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so we've been touring with this project since the release in March. We had some tours in like in Europe, in Germany, in the UK, in Austria, in Switzerland, in Belgium, just been all over the place. We still have a couple of summer festivals here in Europe. And I'm currently working on a couple of different projects. I got some composition commissions. I got a commission from the French Philharmonic Orchestra
Wow.
to compose a concerto that will involve improvisation for me.
Good.
Uh, so that's going to be an intriguing process that's going to take a chunk of my time for the next year or so. Some other projects with the percussion ensemble. I'm writing more music for a trio project, and I'm also going to be part of kind of an interesting new project with, I don't know if you know this saxophone player from France called Émile Parisien.
The name seems familiar, but I'm
Yeah,
not as familiar as I should be.
yeah, he's a really incredible, exclusively soprano sax player.
Mm.
Really, really incredible player. And so we have this project together with Linda O.
Oh yeah, she's
Um,
great.
so with Linda and this Indian percussion player. So it's going to be kind of an interesting vibe as well. And we have a lot of stuff coming up in 26. We're recording and releasing an album. So that's going to keep me busy for a while.
Gotcha.
And yeah, interesting stuff. And yeah, basically the daily grind of being at the piano, trying to figure out stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's always on my mind for me. I'm sure it is for you.
oh yeah, it's my favorite part. You know, people are like, "What's your favorite part?" Playing big festivals, like, yeah, that's cool. My favorite part is the journey. Really, it sounds super cliche, but my favorite part is waking up in the morning, having a couple of espressos, and going into the lab. You know, it's like, what is happening here? What is he doing? What is Bud Powell doing on glass enclosure? You know, it's like, what you know, what's going on? and uh, and that's basically my favorite part.
Yeah, and as a sort of geared jazz musician, hearing that from you, that's not completely surprising because the thing that separates a lot of the music we do, I think, with some certain other music, not all, of course, but there's an element of kind of what you were getting at earlier at the start of the interview, element of integrity in the music, and it's about how true are we to what we are meaning to do, how do we explore all the things in the music. It's like you said, all about the journey, and there's an integrity and a sort of a almost moral center around that.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Like, I think it is the foundation. Like the day we stop learning is the day we stop progressing.
Yeah, well said.
You know, and I think that's the mindset of all my heroes, whether it's Kobe Bryant, you know, whether it's Nadal, whether it's you know, some of my favorite philosophers and authors who basically wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. and start writing, even though they're like, you know, they wrote bestsellers and they don't need the money, you know, but it's just the loving the process more than the result.
Well, and that's what keeps you engaged with the the grind, as you called it. um it's the fun of the journey and the exploration and the process of it rather than the result, because a 1 hour set at a festival is over like that,
Yeah,
and it was an awesome time, and I love performing, maybe slightly more than composing, but that's me, and we all have our avenue. So I love the act of performing. That gives me life personally with what I do musically, but also it's so quick you can't put all your eggs in that basket because you're going to deplete your persistence, because you can't play 24 hours a day at a jazz festival every every week. That's just one, taxing on you, and two, that's not how life works. And so there has to be other joys within the process that keep you going and keep you along your musical journey, you know. So,
right.
all right, Yaron Herman, a Paris-based pianist, composer, author. I want to ask, what made you write a book? What's the title of your book? Where can people find that? And what's your thought process on that?
Well, for people who want to read it, it's only in French and Japanese, oddly. It's been translated to Japanese. So if your French is good and your Japanese is good, you will have the joy of reading this work. I basically wrote a book about creativity because, like we said earlier, I think there are a lot of mystique around the subject, and I wanted to maybe demystify a bit, the way people consider the notions of talent and what's more important. Are we all creative? How can we develop our creativity? How can you a bit kind of hack the process? Um, Speaking about like the true reality on the ground for people who do it every day. Um, and I basically wrote it during the pandemic where I didn't have any concerts and I felt useless.
Hmm.
So I asked myself, what's the role of an artist in a society when he cannot perform?
Yeah.
How can he contribute? So I was like, okay, I think what I can contribute is maybe share some insights about the creative journey that might be useful to people who are not musicians. So I was trying to isolate principles and notions and concepts that could be transposed to other aspects of living. So that put me on a path of like really trying to basically reverse engineer certain aspects of what we call creativity. And yeah, that's basically the idea behind it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And the website is what? YaronHerman.com?
Absolutely.
That's it. Everyone listening, check out YaronHerman.com. Also, I saw a great TED talk you gave, and it's relatively short, so I urge people to check that out. Um, was that just a one time thing? Are you going to do anything more like that?
I actually gave a couple, but yeah, I try and focus now on like um, the touring aspect and the music aspect. If something comes along, I'll consider it. But like it's a lot of work, these things. It seems like you go on stage and just basically speak for 10 minutes, but it takes a lot of work, these things.
Well, and it was very informational and it made so much sense. You basically gave a 10-minute spiel about what you can create with just three notes. And, the way you layered that on top of itself as you went along was spot on. So thank you for that kind of work as well, because sometimes you put a jazz record on for people who don't typically may listen to that style of music. You may lose them if they're not as familiar or they don't want to engage with the music as well as they should. Something like that can really open people's minds, and then they start to check out the music more, because then they're starting to understand a little bit the mechanics behind how does
Yeah,
composing work, and what really, it's doing a lot of different things with the same things from the jump. It's kind of what
yeah,
you're great at exploring. Great. So thank you, YaronHerman.com. Everyone, please check it out. The album is called Radio Paradise, and it's got a lot of great artists. Just real quick, could you list everyone on the album for us?
yeah, sure. So on saxophone, tenor saxophone, you have Maria Grant, Alexandra Grimal, Hagai Cohen-Milo on bass, and Ziv Ravitz on drums.
There it is. And awesome music from track to track from beginning to end. Thank you, Yaron, for joining us on the Jazz Jam podcast.
Thank you.